Welcome to VYD classes, and we have discussed earlier in lecture 1 up to the land tilting in this in economic and inclusive growth chapter. Okay, so we will cover today from SVAMITVA scheme up to from banking and payment systems, and we will cover next lecture, that is the external sector and agriculture and allied activities. So we will start first at SVAMITVA scheme today. Okay, so let's start the scheme, SVAMITVA scheme. So what is this scheme all about? Survey of village abadi and mapping with improvised technology in village areas, that is SVAMITVA, launched by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. I will tell you that what are need of the schemes in exam, not all about the worthless. Okay, so exam is very near and you will understand some points related to schemes. Okay, so first is the objectives of the scheme. What are objectives of the scheme? This is okay. Wait. Yes. So what are objectives of the scheme? So these are the some objectives of the SVAMITVA scheme. So first is the create accurate land records for rural planning and enable rural citizens to use property as a financial assets for the taking loans and support preparation of a better equality Gram Panchayat development plan and determination of property tax, creation of survey infrastructure and global GIS maps for use by any department. So these are the some objectives of the scheme. Okay, and more about this scheme: the establish clear ownership of the property in rural inhabited areas, provide a record of rights to village household owners with issuance of legal ownership cards, property cards. A scheme involves what schemes involves what scheme involves that mapping of land parcels using drone technology. So drone technology is very crucial about the in SVAMITVA scheme. Okay, next is establishment of continuous operating reference systems, establishing ground control points. Okay, and calls operating system, continuous operating reference system has applications in sectors like disaster management, emergency response, transport, agriculture, construction and planning, asset management, etc. And development of a special planning application, Gram Manchitra. So this is all about Gram Manchitra. You can address this in your answer writing. Okay, Gram Manchitra. So remember this point. Gram Manchitra is what? A unified geospatial platform for all Gram Panchayat. Geospatial platform. This is important keyword. So remember this. Okay. And next is the awareness generation to sensitize rural population about surveying methodology and its benefits. So these are the some facts about the SVAMITVA scheme. Broad areas of SVAMITVA scheme and what is the impact of SVAMITVA scheme in which areas? The area of creation of land records of the inhabited area of villages, use of abadi property as financial assets for loans, management of property, tax collection in rural areas, and rural planning. So these are the 3 to 4 areas which you can mention in your answer writing while this Swamitva scheme will come. Okay, and present scenario in the Swamitva, land records are maintained across different departments and these departments work in silos. So these are some constraints about in present scenario. No authentic ownership document, and land cannot be used to as collateral for banks. Lack of accurate property registers. Okay, and next is the no framework for proper land use planning. So this is the constraint about Swamitva. Next is the what will help Swamitva scheme generate maps, record of rights, property cards issued. Okay, and next is the record of rights is very important in these features. Creating digitized property register where properties are identified and marked with a unique number. Automatic tax assessment through appropriate software, resulting in less grievances and more tax collections. So this you can remember. Next is Swamitva can enable spatial budgeting by unlocking the land use map made available through the drone surveys and feature extraction. So these are the some features. And next area is use of geospatial infrastructure and data of Swamitva by other agency. This is the infrastructure maintained by the Swamitva scheme. What are constraints? Data presently available is mostly from sketches which are worthless. Okay, and will help the nation spatial reference frame. Having the same reference frame will make the data suitable to be integrated and seamless for other agencies. So these are the some specific points related to Swamitva scheme. A recommendation by the committee under the Panchayati Raj institution under Ministry of Panchayati Raj. So protect the data under the Swamitva, security of this data and protecting privacy, and inclusion in DILRMP. So digital infrastructure land record monetization program. Okay, Ministry of Panchayati Raj will initiate this inclusive development. And next is the unique identifier, QR code or any other unique identifier which to verify the authenticity of the property card instantly. Next is the states should upgrade their property tax management system and data should be made available for industries. This is the important points, that data should be used, data should be available in industries as well. So this is finished for the inclusive development program. Next is the fiscal policy or the government financial system or financial institutions. So first is the government initiative. Okay, so what are the government finance? So status presently government finance in India is 6.4% of GDP as fiscal deficit. So remember this. 83.1% public debt to GDP ratio for financial year 2023. 29.5% combined debt to GDP ratio of states in March 2023, and 60% debt to GDP ratio in presently. There are 40% for central government and 20% for state government. Okay, so you can remember this. And what is Amrit Kal? Amrit Kal, you can put this Amrit Kal in your answer while government finance question came will come. So first Amrit Kal objective is inclusive development, and inclusive development is on news in broad areas as multi-pronged approach are adopting various sectors regarding inclusive development. That recently a group of politics, that is India, 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 mentioned its inclusive alliance, included the inclusive development. Okay, so remember this. Reaching the last mile means the welfare of the people in the rural areas which are not covered under any preference of the government scheme, and infrastructure and investment. Okay, unleashing the potential, green growth, youth power, financial sector. So you can remember this. Okay, key objective of the government finance: use of fiscal policy to promote stable and sustainable growth, to ensure transparent fiscal management systems in the country, to create more equitable and manageable distribution of the country debts over the years, aim for fiscal stability in India in the long run, and bring fiscal deficit target below 4.5% of the GDP by financial year 2026. And this can be in your mind. Okay, next is the schemes or initiatives of the government. So FRBM Act 2023 amended in 2029 and given very stringent about the FRBM Act. Fiscal responsibility legislation adopted by the state. FRBM Act for center as well as states, and fiscal responsibility legislation is for states. Remember this. Creation of Financial Stability and Development Council, and ways and means advances for states as well as union by RBI. So this can be remembered. What are the constraints about the government finance? Vertical imbalance means distribution from center to the states, and horizontal imbalance, distribution among the states. Rising commodity prices and geopolitical tensions leading to high inflation and increased subsidies burden. Low tax to GDP ratio limited the non-compliance of FRBM mandate. Issue of corruption, leakages and free riders for various schemes. Decreased state revenue due to the pandemic uncertainties. So these are the some constraints about the government finance. What are way forward, or what are various initiatives which government can tackle, or community participation can tackle the government financial constraints. Okay, so first is financing from private investment, fiscal deficit and debt levels as per FRBM Act, improving public sector efficiency for effective utilization of financial resources through outcome budgeting, improved transparency and accountability. This can be remembered. Decentralization of public power, financial power for increased financial autonomy of the state and civic bodies. Proactively manage public finances by using data and technology. Reforming taxation system to balance revenue collection with the economic growth. Adoption and effective implementation of public financial management system. So you can remember this. Okay, so next is the fiscal deficit. What are the present scenario of the fiscal deficit in India? What are first you can write what is fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is government spending is more than the government achieve revenue, or government spending exceeds its revenue. Okay, so you can remember this. What is gross fiscal deficit? It is total expenditure of the government minus revenue receipts and non-debt capital receipts. So you can remember this. And what is primary deficit? Fiscal deficit minus interest payment. Interest payment is what? The interest paid by the government to which that taken loan from the various institutions, internal and external institutions. Next is status and objectives. What is status and objective of the fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit of the union government 9.2% of GDP during pandemic year. So you can remember this, 9.2% of GDP in 2021. You can remember this and can be asked in interview. Okay, personality test. Fiscal deficit for financial year 23 moderated 6.4% of GDP. And this cannot be remember because next in personality test, next revised estimate of the government will come in the budget 2024-25. So this need not be remembered for personality test, can be remembered for the only mains perspective. Okay, so present fiscal deficit is 6.4% and the target is 5.9% for financial year 24, and government tries to fiscal deficit is below 4.5% by 2025-26. So this can be remembered. Okay, so combined gross fiscal deficit of the states which are increased 4.1% of GDP in the pandemic affected year was brought down to 2.8% in financial year 2022. So you can remember this. What causes fiscal deficit? Increased government spending, revenue decrease, economic downturn, war or natural disasters, social welfare program. So this is common in every question. So you can remember this point. Okay, social welfare programs, huge interest on government debt. So you can remember this. And what are the favorable factors for declining in fiscal deficit, and what are the fiscal deficit management in India? So you can remember this. The capital expenditure and buoyancy in gross tax collection, direct tax collection is increased. 22% increase in gross GST collection. Okay, resilient economy as the activities accelerated following the COVID-19 crisis. Lower food and fertilizer subsidy bill have been decreased. Higher dividend by central public sector enterprises and higher dividend payout from RBI. So you can remember this. Fiscal deficit management in India. So first is the FRBM, you can remember this, and deficit at a sustainable level. Okay, gradual decline because fiscal glide path envisioned by the government. In union budget, union government has allowed the fiscal deficit of 3.5% of gross state domestic product, with 0.5% for power sector reforms. So this can be remembered. Power sector reforms of the government will spend 0.5% of fiscal deficit. Majority of fiscal deficit is financed through internal market borrowings, and external debt is only about 1%. So in previous year there are more than 95% in external debt and more than 4% for external debt. Okay, so you can remember this, that in this present scenario there are more than 99% for internal debt and less than 1% for external debt. So you can remember this. Okay, next is state finances. RBI has released its annual publication titled State Finances, a study of budgets of 2023 with the theme of capital formation in the role of the state. So you can remember this theme. That capital formation in India, the role of state. Remember easily, capital formation for role with the role of state. If the capital formation increased, state finance is also increased. Okay, so this can be remembered very easily. So India's fiscal federalism and state finances. The Constitution of India follows fiscal federalism. Based on it, it follows certain principles to ensure stability, such as fiscal equivalency. Seventh schedule allocates areas of responsibility under the union and state and concurrent list. So list second state list, that is agriculture, power, health sector, social welfare, etc., with financing provisions by the empowering them with specific resource mobilization, taxation powers. So you can remember this. Okay. Next is the principle of subsidiarity. This point is very important. That is, you can write in your answer. Principle of subsidiarity means the function and autonomy of the local areas, which can be decentralized by the union government towards the state and towards the local areas. So it enhances, principle of subsidiarity enhances revenue generation and spending efficiency in rural areas. For 73 and 74th Amendment Act, specific functions to Panchayat Raj institutions and urban local bodies in 11th and 12th schedule of the Constitution. So you can remember this. Okay. And part 3rd of the Constitution, Article 268 to 2 not remember this, but remember this: center state financial relations through distribution of tax revenue, grants in aid, statutory grants, Article 275, and discretionary grants. So you can confuse for article, so you can leave these articles and remember only core part of the subject, like discretionary grants, grants in aid, what is statutory grants. Okay, so these are the important points you can remember. Net divisible pool by the 15th Finance Commission under article. This article is very important, so you can remember. Living states with different sources of revenue. Next is the to overcome high borrowings and debt traps risk, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003. And next is the Fiscal Responsibility FRBM Act. You have to remember these points regarding FRBM Act. It is your static part, so I cannot repeat these things. Okay. Report and future trends. Aggregate revenue receipts of state governments and union territories was 14.9% of the GDP, out of which 55% was from on taxes. Aggregate expenditure of state governments and union territories 18.5% of GDP, 83% was revenue expenditure and capital expenditure only for 17%. So you can remember this point. Improved fiscal health of states on the back of broad-based economic recovery after a sharp pandemic induced deterioration in the 2021. Okay, state gross fiscal deficit only 4.1% GDP in 2020-21 and 3.4% in 2022-23. So you can remember. High revenue collection. State's debt is budgeted to ease of 29.5% in GDP in 2022-23 as against 31 points. So decreases. State debt has been decreased. Okay, and state's gross fiscal deficit is also decreased. So you can remember easily. Not mug up these data facts. Okay. So what is the significance of strong state finances? Economic growth, attractive investment, employment generation, achieve sustainable development goals. So you can remember these points, and some points that like India's sovereign credit rating, macroeconomic stability, if increase the state's finances, so these are also strong. These will also strong. Quality of public expenditure is increased, will increased. Okay, so you can remember these points. And next, existing concerns related to state finances like vertical imbalance between the vertical devolution by the finance commission to the center, from the center to the states, is vertical imbalances because states is not paid to the tax devolution and revenue deficit grants by the central government. Okay, next is horizontal imbalances. First is vertical imbalances, second is horizontal, means among the states like populous country benefited more than the low popular low populous country, low population state. Okay, and next is dominance of committed expenditure like percentage of pension as states on tax revenue for some states. Next is center's influence on the state expenditure in due to the centrally sponsored schemes. Flattish or modest growth of state on tax revenue. So you can remember this, and lower on non-tax revenue. Okay. And what is the negative impact of poor state finances? There is increased revenue, fiscal and primary deficit. So these are three deficits you can remember and write in this in your answer. Reduced state expenditure for growth of for creation of for growth of the industries and other areas. Reduced economic growth and job creation as states spend more than center. Structural imbalances due to distorted expenditure pattern. Increased disparities between states and risk of spilling fiscal stress to center. You can remember this. Okay, so what are the way forward to tackle the fiscal deficit? So first is the FRBM review committee. 15 according to 15th Finance Commission, replace FRBM with the debt management as fiscal responsibility with public debt to GDP ratio, medium term anchor for fiscal policy in India. So you can remember this, that 15th Finance Commission review committee recommended that replace FRBM with debt management and fiscal responsibility. So you can remember this scheme recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. Next is the creation of Fiscal Council, rule-based policy framework, which can maintain the transparency and predictability in the system. Okay, and fiscal management reforms, fiscal policies with proper standard on reporting of public debt and contingent liabilities, institutional reforms and expenditure reforms. So you can remember this expenditure reforms like growth of R&D, education, health sector, green energy transition, capital formation and productive assets. So you can remember these points. Okay, a recent initiative by the government to improve states' fiscal health, a scheme for special assistance to states for capital investment. Okay, a reform linked additional borrowing space to state government, allowing additional borrowing of 0.5% for its power sector reforms, inclusion of off-budget borrowings in state debt position. So you can remember these points. Okay, and next is the municipal financing. What is municipal financing? RBI has released a report on municipal financing. So you can write an introduction what is municipal financing. Okay, sorry. So financial strength of municipalities. Reasons for weak financial strength of municipalities. Data gap. Information on the fiscal position of urban local bodies is scanty, as most municipalities in India do not have balance sheets in the public domain. Many of them continue to follow the cash accounting system. So you can remember this municipal financing. Municipal laws do not prescribe any uniform accounting standard to be followed, rendering municipal accounts largely incorporable across states and even within states. Legal hurdle, okay, and inefficient property tax collection. So you can remember. Next is the inefficient property tax collection, and some tax resources subsumed in GST. You can remember this. State Finance Commission. State governments have not set up State Finance Commission in regular and timely manner. So you can remember. Keep this in mind. Okay. Next is the bond market at nascent stage, that retail investors cannot easily borrow money for buying bonds from the RBI as well as SEBI institutions. Okay, so keep this in mind. Need for robust financial system for municipalities. So rapid rise in urban population, inadequacy of civic infrastructure and services, financial dependence on central and state governments, need for development of local sustainable development solutions. So these are the some robust financial system for municipalities. Keep this in mind. Okay. So steps needed to strengthen the financial health of municipalities. Tapping capital market. Urban local bodies can issue municipal bonds through an escrow account or finance through special purpose vehicles and state pooled finance entities. So keep this in mind. Next is the credit rating of urban local bodies. In India, municipal bond market is at a nascent stage, and hence credit rating can play an important role in attracting new investors. Land-based financing like vacant land tax or two-part property tax with a higher rate for land than buildings. Sharing of stamp duty collected by state government with local governments. Development impacts, feeds, land monetization, etc. Standardized accounting. A double entry based on accounting system for municipal bodies would facilitate the consolidation of local government data. Keep this in mind. 15th Finance Commission recommended making audited accounting of municipal corporations available online against offline, exploring mechanisms like pooled financing for the state as well as center. Common bond is issued by pooling the resources of several local bodies. So keep this in mind. That is very important for upcoming means 2023. Initiatives for improving finance health of municipalities, because these schemes are very important and will come definitely in questions. Okay, so keep this in mind all about very effectively. Okay, 15th Finance Commission recommended 4.36 lakh crore as a grants to local governments for the period 2021-22 to 2025-26. So keep this in mind. 4.36 lakh crore period. What period? 2021-22 to 25-26. Keep this in mind. Department of Economic Affairs under Ministry of Finance has issued guidelines on the use of municipal bond financing for infrastructure projects. Central government has included credit rating of municipal council in reform agenda of the smart cities and Amrut programs. Okay, you can remember this. Pooled financing. What is this? Pooled financing essentially involves creation of a state pooled finance entity which can be registered either as a trust or a special purpose vehicle. So keep this in mind. The pooled financing is what. Okay, next is pooled financing mechanism. How working pooled financing mechanism, that this is pooled fund SQ account. Okay, and this is bond proceeds investor, this is investors bond proceed from the pooled fund. Okay, and municipal bond received by investors and give money to the pooled fund. And urban local body A, urban local body B and C, these are bond proceed to the project A, project B and project C, and these projects will cash flow to the pooled funds escrow account. So keep this in mind, the mechanism of pooled financing mechanism. And debt paid to the investors by the pooled fund escrow to the investors. So this is the mechanism of pooled finance. So keep this in mind. Next is the municipal bond. Recently, NSE Indices Limited, National Stock Exchange arm, has introduced the country's first ever municipal bond. So NSE, remember this, NSE introduced the country's first ever municipal bond index. Okay, so municipal bond market is what? Municipal bond market is regulated by the SEBI in India. Financial incentives. Government of India has also provided incentives in the form of a lump sum. Remember this, what is lump sum? Grants in aid for municipal means whole, only one time payment for municipal bond issuances. Largely investment grant rating 59% of municipal bonds. Keep this in mind. Rating of investment grade or above. Information database. SEBI has launched an information database on municipal bonds in the form of statistics and regulations circular, etc. Okay, so keep this in mind. What is municipal bond? You can introduce the municipal bond in your answer. They are bonds issued by the local government bodies and do not carry any government guarantee. So keep this in mind, that no guarantee taken by the urban local bodies, urban local government. Okay, and benefits of municipal bonds, that is financing discipline, filling the urban financing gap, expansion of municipal service. Okay, and higher return for investors. So keep this in mind. And what are the constraints for municipal bond market in India? Import restrictions. Municipal laws in India allow municipal corporations to borrow, but with the permission of the respective state government and with added conditions. So the state government is involved to issue the bond market. Lack of secondary market for municipal bond, like hurdle in the bond in the SEBI. Okay, no tax benefits. Secondary consumer cannot easily participate in this municipal bonds. Inaccessibility due to high face value. Risk factors involved, like rating agencies cannot consider as low risk as government AA. These are the ratings. Okay, so cannot be considered as low risk as government of India or state government bonds. Keep this in mind. What are way forwards to tackle the municipal bond crisis? Improving the overall policy environment for investment, like involvement of major credit rating agencies, central government in the form of reform linked financing incentives for the push. Okay, popularizing the initial successes, like bond financing can be a viable alternative for raising resources for municipal corporations. So keep this in mind. Next is developing a secondary market. One municipal amount like generating awareness, engaging primary dealers, and going forward, listing these bonds on stock exchanges as well. Attracting the retail investors. So you can remember this stock exchanges. Okay, and next is the attracting the retail investors. So keep this in mind. Next is the direct taxation. What is the present scenario of the direct taxation in India? 11.7% tax to GDP ratio, 6% for direct taxes, 5.7% for indirect taxes. So keep this in mind. Record 16.61 lakh crore direct tax collection, jump of 17% from previous year. Corporate tax and personal income tax, the main contributors to the direct tax. Direct tax buoyancy at 2.52 was the highest in the last 15 years. So keep this in mind. Okay. What are the target of government? Budget 2023-24 had set a direct tax revenue target of 18.2 trillion rupees. Okay. So remember this. The center projected corporate tax at 9.2 lakh, personal income not much facts. Remember, okay, only remember the conceptual part. Taxpayers charter to provide a transparent and taxpayer friendly tax regime. Faceless assessment scheme and faceless appeals scheme are honoring the honest. So keep this in mind, the schemes of the government. Next is the Income Tax Act to cover virtual digital assets. Authority for advance rulings and tax treaties, international taxation like the double taxation avoidance agreement and tax information exchange agreement, etc. Information sharing between government departments. So keep this in mind. What are the constraints? Despite record gross tax collections, the tax to GDP ratio is much lower than OECD countries. OECD countries like 33.5% and in India only 5% something. Okay, so keep this in mind. Source of the tax evasion and corruption. High exemption limit and deductions. Multinational companies setting up offices in low tax jurisdiction countries like or tax havens like Ireland. Okay. Lack of global consensus over tax rates. Issues surrounding digital taxation. So keep this in mind. Way forward, direct tax code online to GST, base widening by increasing the number of taxpayers, exploring taxation on agricultural income, rationalization of incentive provisions, efficient information center digitization, etc. Build resilient economy to minimize impact of supply chain disruptions and commodity price rise on tax collections. Next is the participating in international framework like OECD automatic exchange of information to check tax evasion. So keep this in mind. Okay. Next is the digital tax. What is the digital tax? Digital tax is the simply the tax collection through the digital ways. G24 grouping objected to the proposal of making sovereign commitments to not introduce any future digital services like equalization levy, which was levied by the government of India with 6% on the multinational companies, digital multinational companies, okay, like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, etc. Digital service tax is part of the OECD's two-pillar plan. agreed 30 upon by 137 countries including India in 2020 for levied the digital tax on multinational companies. OECD two-pillar plan. Plan 1 was reallocation of taxing rights, and Pillar 2 in Pillar 1 relocation of taxing rights multinational enterprises to places where they sell products or provide services. Pillar 2 global anti-base erosion mechanism, setting global minimum corporation tax of 15% from 2023 to large multinational enterprises. Global minimum tax is part of inclusive framework on base erosion and profit shifting. So keep this in mind. Agreed upon by the G20 as well as OECD. Keep this in mind. Okay. Next is the digital tax in India. Digital tax refers to the tax levied on digital goods or services or digital businesses activity. It is form of direct tax. So keep this in mind. Digital tax is a direct tax. Okay. In 2016, India was one of the first countries to introduce 6% equalization levy on the multinational enterprises like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc. Next is the in 2020, Indian Income Tax Act expanded the scope of the equalization levy. Part of the Finance Act 2020. New levy now includes 2% digital service tax or equalization levy on trade and services of foreign commerce companies such as Amazon and Walmart, on Flipkart and others having an annual turnover of rupees 2 crores or more. Digital service tax is aimed at ensuring that non-resident digital service providers pay their fair share of tax on revenue generated in the Indian digital market. Next is the rationale to the digital tax. Overcoming lacuna of obsolete laws. More laws stringent are about the digital tax. International tax law. Digital companies are taxed where economic activities are carried out has been globally recognized. Proliferation of digital service tax. Fair competition. Equalization levy ensures fair competition and reasonableness and exercises the ability of government to tax business. So keep this in mind. Level playing field. It will be more beneficial for country as well as multinational enterprises. What are the challenges associated with digital tax? Retaliatory tariff. US Trade Representative digital service tax to be discriminatory and has announced retaliatory tariffs which could lead to the digital tax war. Quantifying data, that is inadequate quantifying data for the digital transaction. Okay, so keep this in mind. Burden on customers, because may not directly pay this as a tax, but this could mean higher prices for them, not easily charged by the customer. Lack of consensus among the government as well as multinational enterprises. So what are way forward? Global coordination, new model, bilateral treaties and conclusion. So you can pause this video and you can remember, you can read these points, okay, if you want. Next is transfer pricing. Supreme Court altered the approach to the resolving transfer pricing disputes in India. Okay, so recent Supreme Court set aside an earlier Karnataka High Court ruling which held that transfer pricing matters the determination of the arm's length price by the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. What is transfer pricing? To reduce tax burden through an example. What is division A is the higher tax country than division B. So division A has manufacture software and division B which manufacture cars. So these companies can cooperate with each other for transfer of their equipments to each other. Overall company can save on taxes by making division A less profitable and division B more profitable. So these are the constraints between these two companies. So remember this. Arm's length transaction. What is this? Price agreed between terms is a fair value, then it is arm's length. So you can remember, and it is not very important, or you can read one time only, 1 or 2 times, then easily can be tackled. Okay, transfer pricing. What is this? So accounting practice that allows for the establishment of prices for the goods and services exchanged between divisions, subsidiaries, or affiliates that are part of the larger enterprises. So keep this in mind, the definition of transfer pricing. What is arm's length pipelines? So in this diagram easily you can understand this. Okay, this. Okay, arm's length pipeline was agreed upon by OECD member countries. So keep this in mind, that arm's length pipeline was initiated by the OECD countries. Objective guidelines for use by multinational companies and tax administration. Purchase goods and services from related company entities should be the same as if the two entities were unrelated. So keep this in mind. Next is the asset monetization. National Land Monetization Company or Corporation to fast track the monetization of land and non-core assets of the public sector entities. So asset monetization is what? That is, asset monetization involves the creation of new sources of revenue by unlocking the value of hitherto unutilized or underutilized public assets. Remember this. And under this asset monetization, that is the 111 lakh crore expended by the central government for the financial year 2020 to 2025 under the national infrastructure pipelines. Okay, so 15 to 17% of it is expected to be met that innovative and alternative initiatives such as the asset monetization. So like 6 lakh, about 6 lakh crore expenditure on the asset monetization. So keep this in mind. Okay, on core assets of the government, that is core assets as well as non-core assets. What are these? So core assets like urban, pipeline and telecom, airport and seaport, logistics and warehouse, power, railway and roads. So keep this in mind. Non-core, land and building. Keep this in mind. Okay. Yes. Asset monetization structure, like public authority and asset rights. Public authority given the right to authority gives the right to the asset to the company, private investors, and private investor can create operation maintenance, can create an infrastructure and given the consideration to the government or public authority, and public authority give the concession to the public investment. So these are the structure, and you can make this diagram in your notes and use this diagram in your answer writing. So infrastructure asset monetization cycle, this is the existing asset base, monetize existing asset, proceeds from monetization, and then new infrastructure created by the private sector. So keep this in mind. Next is benefits of asset monetization. First is resource mobilization, create greater financial leverage and value for the companies as well as for the government, with a significant stake in them through better use of resources. So keep this in mind. Okay, efficient operation and management. Next is the challenges to asset monetization: financial challenge, regulatory challenge, other challenge. Like financial challenge, like pipeline to attract the key investors' interest, bidding, robust asset pipeline. Regulatory challenges like lack of independent sectoral regulators, structural problems such as legal uncertainty and absence of a deep bond market, inefficient dispute resolution mechanism. So keep this in mind. Other challenges like lack of state participation and lack of local bodies, uncertainties due to COVID-19, climate related disparities, and Russia-Ukraine war as well. Political influence and issues of corruption. Keep this in mind. What are way forwards to tackle the monetization crisis? National monetization pipeline. The sector-specific plans is first step to help public sector plan their fundraising on brownfield assets. So keep this in mind. Okay. Ensure proper implementation of asset monetization plan by building capacity and expertise, systematic and transparent allocation with international best practices with oversight committee to ensure international investors' interest. Keep this in mind. Work closely with state to encourage them for leveraging asset for resource mobilization to ensure high capital investment for higher growth and jobs. So keep this in mind. Developing proper brownfield model and framework to set quality benchmarks with flexibility in contracts, robust dispute resolution mechanism, strong regulatory framework. So keep this in mind for the monetization of the pipeline. Success of power grid infrastructure in investment trust. Okay, so keep this in mind that the example of power grid infrastructure investment trust for the monetization of pipeline. So next is the cryptocurrency. The present scenario of the cryptocurrency is Bitcoin or Ethereum or digital or virtual currencies in which encryption. Why news? Because RBI issued its own cryptocurrency like National Digital NCDC something goes. Yeah, name this. Okay, so advantages of cryptocurrencies: elimination the middleman, enhancing security of the payment services, reduces leakages, being an enable financial inclusion, empowering businesses, showcasing high potential for use outside economic discourse. So keep this in mind. The advantage of the cryptocurrencies. Concerns related to cryptocurrencies: controlling the macroeconomic variables, misuse in criminal activities like money laundering and terror financing, face high volatility of value and trading volumes by most of the cryptocurrencies, tax evasion and avoidance is because of lack of central oversight, managing crypto cybersecurity issues which could be susceptible to hackers and malicious users, might create a new divide, financial inclusion and technologically access. Major factors in carbon dioxide emissions that mining could become a severe for this use of cryptocurrency. Present status in India. Okay, then RBI launched its own cryptocurrency known as the central bank digital currency. Okay, India has introduced a taxation scheme on virtual digital assets, includes cryptocurrencies on non-fungible token, etc. But there is still no clarity on their regulation. Also, cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021 was listed in winter session. So you can remember. Next is the way forward. Exploring the idea of central bank digital currency. Mastering the regulatory sandbox. Okay, by adopting a regulatory approach which evolves rapidly and fixed problems along the way. Regulators need to boost their investor safeguard measures until they regulate them tightly, preparing the ecosystem for adopting of digital finance, digital penetration and strengthening cybersecurity ecosystem, involving private sector to encourage innovation, evolving a monetary policy for the digital age, maintaining international collaboration for the financial stability. So keep this in mind about the cryptocurrency reforms. Next is the central bank digital currency. What will raise them? So look this central bank digital currency. 1 minute. Okay. Central bank digital currency. Okay. Next is the central bank digital currency. RBI has recently launched a pilot project on central bank digital currency and issued a concept note on the central bank digital currency. So keep this in mind. This is very important for upcoming UPSC main. Okay. So feature of central bank digital currency: sovereign currency issued by the central banks in alignment with their monetary policy. Liability on the central bank's balance sheet. Safe store of value. Fungible legal tender. Yes, holders of central bank digital currency need not have a bank account. So keep this in mind. It is very important for your prelims examination as well. Records are maintained using a distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger technology like blockchain can be used in this central bank digital currency. Sovereign currency. Okay, so keep this in mind. Digital rupees proposed by the concept note. So amendment of the RBI Act 1934 to include digital rupee in the definition of term bank notes. Design of the digital rupee will be decided based on the circumstances and needs so that it is compatible with the goals of the financial and monetary stability. Keep this in mind. Accordingly, two forms of central bank digital currencies may be introduced: CBDC retail and CBDC wholesale, potentially available for the use by all private sector, non-financial consumers and businesses. And CBDC wholesale, designed for the restricted access by financial institutions. So keep this in mind. Two forms of CBDC may be introduced. Okay. Next is it can be structured as token based or account based. Token based CBDC is a bearer instrument like the bank notes. Whosoever holds the token at a given point in time would be presumed to own them. The account based system would require the maintenance of record of balances and transactions of all holders of the CBDC. So keep this in mind. Principle of managed authority. Principle of managed anonymity may be followed. Anonymity for the small value and traceable for high value, akin to anonymity associated with physical class. CBDC in India would be based on the two-tier indirect model. See infographic for detail. CBDC would be non-remunerative, that is non-interest bearing. Keep this in mind. About CBDC, RBI defines CBDC as a legal tender issued by the central bank in a digital form, and it is included in the Banknote Finance Bill 2022. Induced. Yes, rationale for the introduction of CBDC. Reduction in cost associated with the physical cash management to further the digitization for a less cash economy, supporting competition, efficiency and innovation in payment system, improvement in cross-border transactions, support financial inclusion, for the last mile. So keep this in mind. Okay. CBDC is not CBDC is not mobile money like UPI, BHIM, UPI or PhonePe or Paytm. Mobile money and CBDC difference. Only a type of payment transaction, and CBDC is a new payment instrument. Liability of commercial banks and other financial institutions. Direct liability of the central bank. Only RBI can tackle this. Mobile wallets are subject to know your customer age limitations, and that is universally accessible nationally. Requires the presence of intermediary issuing and acquiring banks, financial institutions or payment service providers authorize and validate the payments. Okay, so peer-to-peer payment mechanism of the CBDC between sender and receivers and eliminates the need for interbank settlement. So keep this in mind. What is CBDC is not. Central bank digital currency characteristics are central authority, less volatile, flexible, supply, lower privacy and anonymity. Example, e-Naira in Nigeria, digital yuan in China is regulated. And this is the blockchain technology. Private cryptocurrencies characteristics like decentralized, highly volatile, limited supply, higher privacy and anonymity. Example, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So keep this in mind. Next is the potential challenges in adopting digital currencies in India. Cyber hacks and threat to privacy, technology preparedness. Lower level of technology adoption may limit the reach CBDC and add to existing inequalities in terms of accessing financial products and services. Impact on bank credit availability, currency substitution through cross-border transactions. So keep this in mind. Okay. Next is the way forward. Robust regulatory framework protecting financial market. Okay, and ensuring high standard of cyber security with parallel efforts on financial literacy for the dealing with CBDC, ensuring compliance with anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism, assuring privacy, following BIS principles, foundational principles issued by the central bank for international settlement. Bank for international settlement to be considered the central banks while issuing a CBDC. Keep this in mind. Next is the markets in crypto assets. European Parliament has recently passed the markets in crypto assets legislation, which is expected to regulate the crypto industry. What is all about this? First set of regulations in the world. Crypto asset services provider as well as the consumer protection. Markets in crypto assets will apply directly across the European Union without any need for national implementation laws. So keep this in mind. Markets in crypto assets distinguishes between different types of crypto assets like electronic money tokens, asset reference tokens, utility tokens. So keep this in mind. Need for this crypto asset regulation, input accountability over the other countries, protect the consumers, ensures financial stability, supports innovation and fair competition to address environmental concerns. What are cues for India? Boost investor confidence, to regulate the unregulated sectors, to protect the Indian investors. Okay, to prevent money laundering and terror financing, to encourage healthy competition. And what are way ahead for India? To alternate the definition of currency, to set up regulatory body for the cryptocurrencies as well as blockchain, or to create penal provisions for the creation of theft, fraud, cheating cases with respect to crypto assets. So keep this in mind. To set norms for CASP, or set up for a company to be licensed as CASP in the country and should be regulated under the supervisory function of a government regulatory body. So keep this in mind. Next is the banking. Banking is what? That is status of banking system in India. 15.4% credit growth for scheduled commercial banks and 4.5% for gross NPA ratio and 1.2% of net NPA of scheduled commercial bank at end December 2022. So keep this in mind. 71.6% was the provision coverage ratio of scheduled commercial banks September 2022. Annualized return on the assets and return on inquiry equity for public sector banks turned positive in the 2020 after remaining negative since March. So keep this in mind. What are the objectives of the banking? Diversified, efficient financial system that then contribute in greater, improve the allocating efficiency of resources, removing financial repression, stepping up prudential regulations at the same time. So keep this in mind. What are the initiatives or schemes by the government to create robust ecosystem of the banking system? Enhanced access and service excellence 5.2 reforms of public sector banks. Previous by the government launched creation of regulatory review authority 2.0 for regulated entities. Regulatory reforms including the expansion of the bank licensing framework. Supervisory initiatives such as prompt corrective action. Okay. Next is the increase in deposit insurance to 5 lakh within the interim payment for the public insurance. Fraud registry of RBI to blacklist perpetrators of the online frauds. Daksh scheme for advanced supervisory monitoring system of RBI monitors compliance requirements in supervised entities like banks, non-bank financial companies, etc. RBI has classified major banks like SBI, ICICI and HDFC Bank as domestic systemically important bank. What are the constraints for the banking system? High proportion of NPAs at 5.5%, increasing burden of regulatory compliance and steady decline in the capital adequacy for Indian banks, especially for the public sector banks. So keep this in mind. Emerging competition from non-banking companies, fintech, etc. because of limited integration in the different sectors of the financial system, limited adoption of the technology, especially at the ground level, changing consumer expectations with growing security breaches. In addition to these, public sector banks also face other problems like the bureaucratization and political interference, etc. So keep this in mind. What are way forwards? Streamlining of the supervision process with the combining of on-site and off-site surveillance along with external auditing. Introduction of the process of structure and discretionary intervention for the problem banks through a prompt corrective action mechanism. Greater coordination for regulation and supervision of the financial conglomerates. Creditor rights and corporate governance. Restoration of public sector banks' net worth through recapitalization where needed. And invest in the emerging technologies to deliver a superior experience in a secure manner, and invest in emerging technology like artificial intelligence, ICT, etc., helping to withstand competition. So keep this in mind. Next is the banking system liquidity. What is all about? Surplus mode since May 2019. Indian banking system liquidity turned into a deficit mode in September 2022. About banking system liquidity and its significance. What is banking system liquidity? Refers to the readily available cash that banks need to meet short-term business financial needs. Liquidity adjustment facility is a primary instrument of the RBI operations to inject or absorb liquidity into the banking system. Adequate liquidity boosts growth and investment and ensure the stability of the interest rates and exchange rates. So keep this in mind. Major reason behind the banking system: liquidity deficit, disparity between credit growth and deposit growth at banks, hefty out of money due to advanced tax payment by the companies, aggressive RBI measures to stem the fall in rupee against the US dollar, swallowing rupee from the banking system, ballooning government cash balances estimated around 3 trillion, rise in balance of payments, deficit at capital accounts as well as the current account level, rise in discretionary spending by people due to the festive season among the other reasons. Impact of banking liquidity deficit: increase in deposit rates or special deposit schemes, increased cost of borrowed funds due to the rise of money market rates, yield on treasury bills. Treasury bills spiked recently due to the tighter liquidity conditions. Potential repo rate change from RBI, which will increase banks' repo linked lending rates and the marginal cost of fund based lending rates, resulting in higher loan interest rates for the consumers. Reduced demand can further lead to contraction of economic activities, increased difficulties for RBI. So keep this in mind. What are way forward? Current liquidity deficit may be attributed to temporary factors like advanced tax flow, but if it is long-term in nature, skillful management of system liquidity becomes crucial for sustained growth. Along with RBI's open market operations, reducing the government's cash balance can help in stabilizing yields as well as ensure proper liquidity in the system. So keep this in mind. Transition from London Interbank Operated Rate (LIBOR). What is this? RBI has issued an advisory to bank and other RBI regulated entities asking them to take steps to ensure complete transition away from the London Interbank offered rates from July 2023. What is LIBOR? London Interbank offered rate. This is benchmark rate, global benchmark interest rate at which major global banks lend to one another in the international interbank market for short-term loans. Usage as benchmark: it is used as a benchmark to settle trades in future options, swaps and other derivative financial instruments in over the counter markets as well as exchange globally. Consumer lending products including mortgages, credit cards and student loans among others to use it as a benchmark rate. So keep this in mind. More about news. LIBOR and the Mumbai Interbank Forward Outright Rate will be phased out by June 30. Mumbai Interbank Forward Outright Rate, a domestic interest rate benchmark. These are benchmark, okay? So keep this in mind. A global Mumbai Interbank Forward Outright for the Indian banking system, Indian benchmark system, and London Interbank offered rate for the international banking benchmark. Okay, so keep this in mind. Global transition from LIBOR was necessitated after British financial authorities decided to phase it out in 2017. Large banks manipulated the reference rate or rate up or down by the providing false data. Need for the global transition from LIBOR. Reliance on banks manipulation. Role in 2008 financial crisis. The use and abuse of credit default swaps was one of the major drivers of the 2008 financial crisis. Rates for CDS were set using LIBOR. So keep this in mind. Next is additional transition benefits to India. Reduction in financial cost. reduced borrowing cost, more competition, with competition in the market for reference rates. So keep this in mind. India's transition scenario. Alternative reference rates. System of alternative reference rates that allows banks to choose rates from basket of currencies rather than the British pound for international financial transactions. Fallback clause. What is fallback clause? That RBI has pushed for the insertion of fallback clauses, revised considerations in all remaining legacy financial contracts that reference Libor or Mumbai Interbank offered rate. Challenges in transition. Identifying and adopting suitable asset ratio to replace Libor. So keep this in mind. SOFR in the US, TIBOR in Japan, Tokyo Interbank offered rate, and SOFR means the next is the investment in transition. Transitioning from Libor requiring making significant adjustments to the internal systems, processes, technology upgrades and models, liquidity challenges. The introduction of ARR also poses challenges to market liquidity and consequently can lead to the market inefficiencies and the impact pricing. So keep this in mind. What are way forward? Transition from Libor and ARR involves several steps and financial institutions such as non-banking institutions still face challenges to set the impact of Libor transition products. So keep this in mind. Supplement the capacity of these institutions and enabling them to choose ARR and which create a smooth transition for these institutions and the economy alike. So keep this in mind. Microfinance sector. What is this? Price Waterhouse Coopers and the Association for Microfinance Institutions of India. Microfinance institutions in India, economic growth. Microfinance sector launched by the Microfinance India and the Price Waterhouse Coopers. Keep this in mind. So little important for this, and microfinance is important. Okay, so importance of microfinance institutions: promotes inclusive growth, poverty alleviation, women empowerment, social equity, as microfinance institutions are actively involved in financing of water, sanitation products, services, awareness on government schemes such as Ayushman Bharat, Swanidhi scheme for street vendors, etc. Financial inclusion, remote entrepreneurship and employment generation. So keep this in mind. What are way forward? Bridging the inherent regulatory gaps between lending risk management and control model. So keep this in mind. Opening new investment channels, creation of a robust micro lending landscape, such as compulsory registration of all existing NGO microfinance institutions, prudential accounting norms on capital adequacy and provisioning, specifying the role of editors and supervision of microfinance institutions, promoting interagency coordination, creating councils and committees at the central, state and district level to monitor the sector, and leveraging technology in developing new products by identifying prospective needs of borrowers. For example, analytics-based underwriting and collection models can be used. Developing a fair practices code for transparency and customer protection. So keep this in mind. A transparency on loan terms and interest rates, interest charges, avoiding ill practices such as multiple lending, over borrowing, and customer harassment, through coercive methods of recovery. Next is the capacity building of microfinance institutions through hand-holding in the formative stage, transformation loan to scale up, and creation of a risk development fund managed by RBI for loans to underserved regions, refinance or investment to microfinance institutions. Encouraging microfinance institutions to set up local area banks or floating of local area banks by commercial banks can be explored. So these are the way forward for the microfinance institution. And microfinance institutions, you can remember the non-profit microfinance institutions 0.7%. Non-banking financial company, largest is bank which have 40.99% market share, and then non-banking financial companies, microfinance institutions 30.8%, then small finance banks 18.73%, then non-bank financial companies 8.7%. So keep this in mind. Regulatory framework, it is the static part, so I cannot tell, you can read yourself from zooming, okay, from with pausing the video. Next is government initiatives for microfinance institutions. So India Microfinance Equity Fund, operated through Small Industry Development Bank of India (SVAMITVA), Micro Units Development Finance Agency Mudra, a refinancing institution for Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, E-Shakti project to map existing self-help groups and upholding financial and non-financial information on a dedicated website. So three government initiatives like CDB India Microfinance Equity Fund, for CDB Micro Units Development Finance Agency Mudra, and Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, loans to the MSME sector, E-Shakti project for self-help groups. So keep this in mind. Okay. And next is asset quality and restructuring. Swine news, a non-banking non-performing asset refers to classification of loans or advances for a bank that are in default or in arrears. They are further subclassified into substandard non-performing asset less than 12 months, and standard more than 12 months, and loss assets over the deadline of the time. Okay. Next is the gross non-performing asset of scheduled commercial bank fell to a 7-year low of 5% in September 2022, and net non-performing assets reduced to 1.3%. So keep this in mind. Sectoral share of the non-performing asset is dominated by the infrastructure sector. Disproportionate share of public sector banks, that is about 9/10 of the non-performing assets. India has been one of the worst affected economies from the global financial crisis of 2008. So keep this in mind. What are the reasons for emergence of the India's non-performing assets problems? So economic reason is over optimism in relation to the growth experience in 2006-8 period. Structural issues in the economy such as poor ease of doing business. Systemic reasons, absence of a swift non-performing NPA identification mechanism accompanied with the prolonged policy of regulatory forbearance, abandoning of projects due to the loss of promoter and bank interest in the project, government issues such as weak corporate governance and food dragging with respect to permissions by government. Next is the ethical reason, malfeasance by the bankers in the form of limited due diligence or outsourcing of analysis, manipulation of the restructuring process by the promoter. So keep this in mind. What are the steps taken to halt the growth of NPAs? Recognition. Post the asset quality review of 2015 NPA recognition steps including prompt corrective action framework by the government. Recapitalization includes budgetary allocations and schemes like Mission Indradhanush. Resolution. These includes insolvency and bankruptcy code, Project Sasak, RBI's framework for COVID-19 related stress and other specific schemes like MSME Samadhan. So keep this in mind. Reform. Long-term steps for sectoral reformation have been taken such as implying a more robust credit risk management system, widening of powers of RBI and key reforms undertaken for public sector banks, enhanced access and service excellence, ease net reforms 5.0. So keep this in mind. Okay. What are the challenges that still remain? Apathy in decision-making process due to risk-averse nature of banks. Absence of clear accountability flows creates the issue of moral hazard and inadequate due diligence. Corporate governance issues. Absence of integrated approach that banking sector, NBFC sector and other elements of financial sector are not weaved together. Growth of asset reconstruction companies has not been consistent and not always been synchronous with the trends in NPAs of banks. So keep this in mind. NPA resolution as a catalyst for the reformist of the banking sector. Strengthening the core banking function by making lending practices more efficient, enhancing the level of governance through transparency and creation of clear communication channels. Attitudinal change among all stakeholders by clearly highlighting that regulatory forbearance should be an exception and not a norm. Accelerating the use of technology through tools like blockchain, artificial intelligence, etc. So keep this in mind. Next is the driving integration in the financial system by addressing the connected issues in the NBFCs and fintech sector, fintech companies. So keep this in mind. Next is the improvement in the non-performing assets. Report on the trend and progress of banking in India 2021-22 highlights the banking gross NPAs declined 5% from peak of 9% in 2017-18. So keep this in mind. NPAs have been decreased since 2017-18, last 5 to 6 years. So keep this in mind. Reasons for improvement in NPAs scenario: improved asset quality, enhanced profitability. Asset quality means banks have written off bad loans worth more than 10 lakh crore. Banks have recovered an aggregate amount of more than 6.5 lakh crore through various banking reforms as well as government's fiscal reforms. Okay, so keep this in mind. Next is the enhanced profitability. Banks' credit growth accelerated to a 10-year high while interest expenditure declined, lowering slippage due to enhanced credit monitoring processes coupled with diversification of banks' investment portfolio, augmented capital buffers because of higher provisioning, declining gross NPAs, etc. The soundness of other indicators such as sufficient liquidity, reduced number of banks under RBI's prompt corrective action framework, etc. Remaining and emerging concerns. Inflation is globalized due to continuing geopolitical risks, COVID-19 supply chain risks, etc. and it deteriorates the global growth and trade outlook with growing concerns over recession. Borrowing costs are increasing because of synchronized monetary policy tightening. The share of unsecured credit in total credit has been increasing since 2015. Risk of failures and weaknesses in corporate governance remains. So these are some emerging concerns. So keep this in mind. Way forward. Improving insolvency and bankruptcy code framework effectiveness for timely resolution of stressed assets. Convergence of corporate governance practices. As per the latest report, gross non-performing assets of public sector banks were 6.5% as compared to 3.5% of private banks. Use technology and innovation to supplement supervisory intelligence with big data for containing possible systemic risk. For example, implementation of the centralized information and management system for automatic data reporting by regulated entities, monitoring slippages in restructured asset with the overall strong vigilance from RBI and other financial regulators, ensuring timely intervention whenever necessary. So keep this in mind. Related news in bank mergers have benefited the banking sector, Reserve Bank of India said. So evaluating bank mergers in India since 1997, the RBI paper highlighted that benefited both the acquirer and acquired. So keep this in mind. Merger and acquisition, transactions between two companies to combine in some form, that is merger or combining up to firms to form a new legal entity. Acquisition or an outright purchase of one company by another. So keep this in mind. Benefit of the mergers and acquisition: improved economies of scale, increased market share and distribution capabilities, reduced manpower cost and talent retention, enhanced financial resources, fills business gaps, product, geographical or technology gaps. And dangers is what? Exclusive execution risk due to the lack of commitment from executives. It can have negative impact on customers' perception, reduced competition and creation of too big to fail banks that may have a systemic impact. So keep this in mind. Okay, IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has released proposed changes of IBC for public comments. IBC and its features. IBC has 4 pillars of institutional framework. That IBC has created a single law, and there are 4 pillars. Insolvency professionals, information carry out the resolution process. Insolvency professional and information utilities to store details on lenders, lending terms, etc. in an electronic database. So this is the static portion. You can pause video and read about thoroughly. Okay. Next is the benefits of IBC. Overhauling the corporate distress resolution regime, maximize the value of distressed assets, maintain healthy credit flow, balance the interest of all the stakeholders. And what are the issues in IBC in implementation? Adjudicatory delays, study increase in the time taken for admission of resolution application as well as final resolution and liquidation, declining rates of recovery, cross-border insolvency, upholding home buyers' rights, low utilization of insolvency resolutions or utilization. Next is the key changes proposed in the IBC framework and its benefits. Areas in technology, e-platform to handle multiple processes under IBC. Potential benefits: what will have to this benefit? What will have the benefits from the changes proposed in the IBC? That is transparency, reduced delays, better decision making. And what is the area of next area is admission of CIRP application. Financial creditors to ascertain default or dispute occurrence, and adjudicating authority to mandatorily admit application and initiate CIRP if default is established. Empower adjudicating authority to impose penalties. And what will benefit? Reduce time taken in default verification and swift initiation of CIRP. Decriminalize offences in business laws statutes. liquidation process, eliminating duplication, committee of creditors. And what will benefit? Increased efficiency by reducing duplication, better supervision of the liquidation process, etc. So what are way forward? To further refine the IBC process, filling up vacancies and setting up more benches or specialized benches of National Company Law Tribunal, setting a benchmark for the quantum of haircuts allowed, adoption of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Laws, formulating a professional code, establishment of a single professional self-regulatory IPA like the Institution of Chartered Accountants of India to set standards and regulate the functioning of the insolvency professionals. Next is the news. National Asset Reconstruction Company acquires first stage assets. Okay, so these are the working of the asset reconstruction company. You can pause video and read about this. Okay, significance of bad bank: reduce NPA of banks, improve recoveries and promote competition, opportunities for other asset reconstruction companies at the MSME level. So keep this in mind. Next is the securitization of stressed assets framework, SSAF. Recently, RBI floated a discussion paper on securitization and of asset framework. Stressed assets framework. Securitization refers to the process that involves pooling of loans and then selling them to a special purpose entities, which then issues securities backed by the loan pool. So keep this in mind. How securitization work? So here is underlying assets, reference portfolio, collateral and asset originator. Here is, and process second is showing agent, special purpose vehicle is here, and then it transfer to the capital market investors. Okay, so issues asset backed securities, senior tranches, mezzanine and then junior tranche, and then send it to the asset originator again. Okay, and benefits of state asset framework, that is market: deepening India's credit risk market, facilitate simpler securitization structures, convergence of India's norms with globally accepted prudential norms, help to spread out risk within market. For investors, access to an alternative investment route in stressed assets with an attractive risk or return profile, helps in portfolio diversification, more income opportunities for asset reconstruction companies, financial institutions, provide a market-based mechanism for management of credit risk, that is to sell bad loan, on upfront liquidity to lender on the stressed assets, reduced regulatory capital requirements, improve the quality of the sale and resolution of NPAs. Okay, so you can remember this. Under the SVAMITVA Act, securitization of the stressed asset is done by licensed asset reconstruction companies under the SVAMITVA Act. Under stressed asset framework, the NPA originator will sell them to an special purpose enterprise by the issuing securitization notes. Investors who buy securitization notes are paid based on the recovery from the underlying assets using the waterfall mechanism, depending upon the seniority of the tranches. So keep this in mind. Nobel Prize for Economics 2022. Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has decided to award the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Science for research on banks and financial crises. So keep this in mind. Economic background is bank and financial crisis. occupied the Nobel Prize in Economics. So 2022 Economics Nobel Prize in Economics. Three US based economists, Ben S. Bernanke, Douglas Diamond and Philip H. Debye, getting the Nobel Prize in Economics. Okay, about the research by Bernanke. Analyze the Great Depression of the 1930s, worst economic crisis in modern history. So keep this in mind. Remember this. Significance of the finding of the 2022 Nobel laureates in economics. Research helped us understand role of bank in the economic, particularly during financial crisis, how banking failure can amplify and self-perpetuate a crisis, how bank collapses can be avoided, how financial markets can be regulatory. So these are the terms which are related to the financial crisis all about. So this is not important much, only you can remember which area is more important, and Nobel Prize is given for which area. So banks and financial crisis. So you can remember this only points. Okay. Next is payment systems. What is payment system? As per RBI, cash accounts for nearly 50% of all transactions in India, adding that the number went further north up to 70% of transactions below rupees 500. Next is the 50% volume of the Indian digital payment is dominated by the cards, by debit cards, PPI and IMPS. Next is the 53% value of India's digital payment is dominated by the RTGS and NEFT. 22.4 digital transactions were happening per capita in 2019 from 2.4 in 2014. So keep this in mind. Key objectives of the payment system. So key objectives: providing real-time, secure, accessible and easy payment mechanism. Integrated payment system, making the transaction cost as low as possible. Next is the creating institutional digital and payment infrastructure to manage and sustain high transaction volumes. Expand interoperability between different payment mechanisms. So keep this in mind. What are the government initiatives to the payment system? Increment. RBI's payments Vision 2025 with its 5 pillars: integrity, inclusion, innovation, institutionalization and internalization. Enhancements of the UPI system with UPI Lite, Payments Infrastructure Development Fund, RBI Digital Payment Security Controls Direction 2021, rationalization of merchant discount rates, regulatory sandbox initiative of RBI, and RBI's mission, Her Payment Digital and 75 Digital Villages program, rationalization of merchant discount rates. So keep this in mind. What are constraints about the payment system? Digital has only gradual acceptance. Cyber attacks, data leaks, platform downtimes and information theft leading to data security and privacy risk. Lack of digital financial awareness and digital financial literacy. Low interest and internet and smartphone penetration. Less digital payment products for the non-smartphone users. Customer protection and security of digital payments. Issue of cost and connectivity, especially in the hinterland. So keep this in mind. What are way forward? Foundational infrastructure such as telecommunications along with digital and financial infrastructure. Need of single regulatory mechanism for system. Providing more option for offline payments through mobile devices. Digital payment awareness along with financial literacy. safeguard the integrity of financial systems by assessing and mitigating the risk of the criminal misuse. To measure the adoption of digital payment, geotagging can be used. Increased coordination among the regulators, internet penetration, financial education, financial inclusion, and growth in payment systems need to be pursued in the tandem. So keep this in mind. Okay, next is the scheme for financial support to digital payments. Wine News incentive scheme for the promotion of RuPay debit cards and low value Bhim UPI transactions for the financial year 2022-23. Features of scheme: banks will be provided financial incentives for promoting point of sale and e-commerce transactions using RuPay debit cards and low value Bhim UPI transactions. The scheme will also promote UPI Lite and UPI 123 Pay as economic and user-friendly digital payment solutions and enable penetration of digital payments across all sectors and segments of the population. So keep this in mind. What are the significance of digital payments? Enhanced financial inclusion, increased transparency in the government system, instant and convenient mode of payment, safe and secure, enhanced credit access that establish a user's financial footprint, thereby increasing access to formal financial services including credit. What are the various challenges in digital payment system in India? Cash dependent economy, limited access to bank and cards, and lack of financial literacy. Only 27% Indians have financial literacy are financial literate. Risk of cyber fraud and privacy, cost and connectivity, lack of infrastructure and lack of many digital infrastructure to create robust system about the digital payment system. Next is the tokenization. Wine News, RBI's card on file tokenization norms are effective from 1st October. Card on file tokenization. Tokenization is a process by which card details in a card on file transaction are replaced by a unique code or token allowing purchaser to go through without exposing sensitive details. So this is the process of tokenization transaction. How to tokenize and transactions is processed. Payment initiated using saved card information that gets converted into a token or through a tokenization app. So keep this in mind. Then second is the merchant using token service sends tokenized information to the acquiring bank. And next step is acquiring bank forwards the tokenized request to the issuing bank of the card user. Next is the issuer bank validates the token and accepts or rejects the transaction response. Then the transactions successful. Card details are not transmitted or saved. Yes, this is the benefits of the tokenization of digital assets. Card of file. A transaction is one which a cardholder has authorized a merchant to store his or her MasterCard or Visa payment details and to bill the stored account. So keep this in mind. Online players or merchants are not allowed to store card numbers, CVV and expiry dates for processing online transactions. Any existing details that were saved by merchants will be deleted. Tokenization can be performed only by card issuing bank, Visa, MasterCard, RuPay, who are referred as authorized card networks. So keep this in mind. What are significance of card tokenization? Payment security, fast and easy payments, eliminate the issue of data breaches, decreases merchant liability. So keep this in mind. The significance of the card tokenization. What are challenges in implementation? Impact on small merchants. lack of clarity over integration with various backed systems and network or service providers involved for a seamless transaction experience, lack of awareness in customers about the process of tokenization, inconvenience to the customer. If merchants do not adhere to the card tokenization, they will be forced to obtain the card information from the customer each time they use the merchant portal. Keep this in mind. What is conclude in your answer? The back end infrastructure for processing payments using tokens has to be robust to avoid failures in transactions and enable smooth shifts. Keep this in mind about tokenization. What is fintech sector? Fintech sector scenario in India. Indian fintech industry. Financial fintech means financial technology industry, valued at 50 to 60 billion dollar in financial 21 and is estimated at around 150 billion by 2025. India had a fintech adoption rate of 87% in March 2020 compared to global average of 64%. India has the third largest fintech ecosystem globally, so keep this in mind. These are the factual data which you can grab yourself. Okay, the third largest fintech ecosystem globally, so keep this in mind. Convergence of financial services and technology, banking, payments, non-banking financial companies, security bonding, bank broking, wealth management, distribution. These are the financial sector. And the technological sector in financial technology, it is hardware provider, software provider, cloud provider and platform provider, so keep this in mind. Okay, next is the sectoral potential of fintech. Credit potential to transform the lending and investment landscape by helping consumers and businesses with faster and easier access to capital through online service. Payments financial technology enable transfer of funds for various use of cases, person to person and person to merchant, government to persons, etc. So these are the governance of the financial technology. Pension fintech enabled technologies can make financial planning more accessible through risk management applications, automation of investment process and facilitation of regulatory compliance. Account aggregator service by aggregating financial data of a customer from different financial services and building associated analytics and insights. So keep this in mind. What are the growth drivers of fintech in India? Technological innovation driven by the technologies such as artificial intelligence, interoperable regulatory sandbox system by RBI, increasing internet and smartphone penetration with India having the second highest number of mobile internet users. Favorable demographic with India adding 140 million middle income and 21 million high income household by 2030. Financial inclusion initiatives such as Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission, Direct Benefit Transfers and Atal Pension Yojana. So keep this in mind. These are the government initiatives to increase the financial technology. What are the way forward? First is, what are the challenges regarding India in pursuing economic diplomacy? Data leaks, platform downtimes and information theft, varied adoption as it is not easy for every type of business to adopt fintech, rapidly changing regulations which increase compliance cost and reduce confidence. So keep this in mind. Lack of financial literacy and awareness, growth role of big tech industries in financial system can decrease the overall stability or can lead to the monopolistic issues. So these are the concerns. What are way forwards? strengthening foundational infrastructure such as telecommunications, conducive policy framework addressing the risks of market concentration and interoperability to facilitate large-scale adoption of technology. So keep this in mind. Forging global alliances for smooth retail mobile payments of low value and high velocity, partnering through an extension of UPI network. Next is the collaborate with industry players to build consensus and harmonize the standards of visual representation of payment systems in rural hinterlands for improved experience. And next is the safeguard the integrity of financial systems by assessing and mitigating the risk of criminal misuse of fintech. Modernize legal frameworks to provide an enabling legal landscape with greater legal clarity and certainty regarding the key aspects of fintech activities. So this is all about financial technology and digital lending. Digital lending. Why News Bank RBI's guidelines on digital lending became effective on December 1st. So need for guidelines. Rise in illegal lending apps. Concerns with data privacy, unregulated entities, unreported products, rise in crypto lending. So these are the concerns which RBI has issued the guidelines. These are some digital lending. Okay, so you can remember what is it, that remote and automated lending process largely by the use of seamless digital technologies facilitated by digital lending apps platforms. Growth drivers like emergence of several startups and NBFCs, increasing internet penetration, amplified smartphone usage, a favorable regulatory environment and rising customer expectations. So keep this in mind. What are digital lending asset? Digital lending asset are mobile and web-based applications of the regulated entities that include banks and NBFCs. Lending shares. Private banks have major share in digital lending, followed by NBFCs and public sector banks according to the RBL. However, digital technology lending, that is 24 into 7 operations and great customers experience. Seamless borrowing, inclusivity by supporting zero credit history borrowers, faster loan closures, improved risk management and reduced cost of loans originations. So keep this in mind. Guidelines on digital lending applicability. These guidelines are applicable to digital lending extending to all commercial banks, primary cooperative banks, state cooperative banks, digital central cooperative banks, non-banking financial companies including housing finance companies. So keep this in mind. What are parameters of guidelines? Customer protection and conduct requirements. Loan disbursal, service and repayment shall be executed by the borrower directly. Credit limit. No automatic increase in credit limit. Disclosures to borrowers. Key fact statement to the borrower before the execution of the contract of all digital products. Grievance redressal. Nodal grievance redressal officer will be set up. Technology and data requirements. Collection, usage and sharing of data with third parties. Storage of data. No biometric data is stored or collected in systems associated with the digital lending asset. All data is stored only in servers located within India. The borrowers must be informed about the storage of customer data. Comprehensive privacy policy, technology standards. So these are the some guidelines by the RBI. Next is the regulatory framework. Reporting of loans, due diligence and Other requirements with respect to LSP. Okay, so keep this in mind. What are the issues with guidelines? Business impact. Digital lending norms has led to increased compliance cost, operational entity, and disruptions for fintech in certain business segments. Lack of clarity on the first loss default guarantee. Okay, collaboration between banks and fintech. So keep this in mind. Way forward, these specific guidelines are needed on whether FLDC arrangement between RE and non-RE device made. Okay, so these are the way forward. Fintechs and NBFCs should invest in robust technology, data, and security infrastructure to avoid violating the RBI guidelines. Watertight compliance is required at the lender's end. So keep this in mind. What is the digital banking units? 75 digital banking units as part of efforts to spread the benefits of digital banking to every nook and corner of India. Digital banking units setup and services. So RBI also issued guidelines on the establishment of digital bank units. Guidelines for digital bank unit establishment. What is this? And you can pause video and read this establishment of digital banking unit. Next is the significance of digital banking units. Promote digital financial literacy, improve financial inclusion, build a robust and secure banking system, strengthening digital economy, that adopt a digital strategy, launch new products and services. In MSME retail loans for increased credit penetration in the country. So you can remember this. What are limitations of digital banking unit? Low public awareness, unstable digital connectivity, higher cyber fraud risk, and higher initial cost. So you can remember this. What are way forward? Digital banking units can drastically change the way banks and customers interact with one another, but digital banking unit cannot operate in isolation. They will have to be accompanied with efforts in the direction of increasing financial education, improving digital infrastructure, and most importantly, ensuring that there is trust in the digital banking ecosystem. So keep this in mind. And this is end of this today lecture. So if you have any query, post in the comment section and share and like the video. Here I will end the lecture. So thank you very much. Have a good day.